On June 29, 1995, in the heart of Seoul, South Korea, thousands of shoppers were going about their day inside the luxurious Sampoong department store. It was one of the crown jewels of South Korea's booming economy, 5 shining floors of wealth, fashion, and modern architecture. But in just 20 seconds, the pride of Seoul turned into one of the deadliest peacetime building collapses in modern history. Over 500 people lost their lives, all because of greed, corruption, and concrete that was never meant to hold the weight of human ambition. This is the story of how one man's decision to cut corners destroyed thousands of lives, and what the Sampoong collapse reveals about unchecked greed in our world today. In the 1980s, South Korea was exploding with growth. From war-torn ruins, it had transformed into an economic powerhouse. And with growth came skyscrapers, malls, and department stores designed to show off wealth and progress. One of the boldest businessmen of this era was Lee Jun, the chairman of the Sampoong Group. He wanted to build something never seen before, a department store that would become the crown jewel of Gangnam, Seoul's most glamorous district. But there was a problem. The original design called for an office building, not a mall. Offices are lighter. A department store is heavier, much heavier. And changing a design like that would normally require a full rebuild. Lee Jun didn't care. He forced engineers to change the plans midway. He demanded a 5th floor with fancy restaurants, even though the structure wasn't designed for it. Columns meant to hold steel reinforcements were replaced with weaker concrete. Safety inspections were rushed. All because Lee wanted to cut costs and maximize profits. By the early 1990s, the Sampoong department store was a huge success. It became one of the busiest shopping centers in Seoul, attracting over 40,000 visitors a day. But beneath the luxury boutiques and marble floors, cracks were literally forming. In April 1995, large cracks appeared on the 5th floor near the restaurants. The air conditioning units, each weighing several tons, were placed on the roof, adding crushing pressure. The cracks widened. Shoppers noticed. Employees complained. But instead of closing the store, Lee Jun ordered the cracks covered up, and the store kept running. Why? Because shutting down, even for one day, meant losing money. On June 29, 1995, just hours before the collapse, engineers warned that the building was in danger. The sound of snapping concrete echoed across the top floors. Customers were uneasy. Staff wanted to leave. But management told them, "Stay. Business must go on." At 5:52 p.m., the sound of thunder shook the building. The 5th floor caved in first. Then the weight cascaded downward. Floor after floor pancaked in seconds, trapping thousands of unsuspecting shoppers. The collapse released the force of a small earthquake. Dust filled the air. Screams echoed through the rubble. In just 20 seconds, 502 people were killed and over 1,400 injured. Families were buried alive. Children were crushed under tons of concrete. Seoul stood in shock. Rescue operations lasted days. Miraculously, survivors were pulled from the rubble even a week later. One woman was rescued after being trapped for 16 days with nothing but rainwater to drink. But the question everyone asked was the same. How could this happen? Investigations revealed the truth. The collapse wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of greed, corruption, and negligence. The columns were too thin. The concrete was weak. Safety inspections were falsified, and government regulators, bribed with money and favors, looked the other way. Chairman Lee Jun was sentenced to prison for criminal negligence. But for many families, justice felt hollow. A building meant to symbolize progress had become a graveyard. The Sampoong collapse forced South Korea to rethink its construction industry. Building codes were strengthened, inspections became stricter, and public awareness about safety skyrocketed. But the scars remained.
A pall of smoke lay over the disaster site, toxic fumes threatening the lives of anyone still trapped beneath the crumbled remains of the plush shopping mall. The desperate search for survivors continued. Aided by American seismic equipment flown in from Japan by the US military, rescuers located almost 40 people who spent the night trapped in the rubble. The rescue effort was watched throughout the night on national television as a wave of outrage swept South Korea. As many as 40,000 people would shop here each day. Police investigating the collapse have said the mall's owners knew the top floor was crumbling. They said that 2 hours before the collapse, with shoppers still crowding into the 5-story building, the management held an emergency meeting. But the building wasn't evacuated. And while hundreds were killed or injured, police said the company chiefs escaped unhurt. City officials blame poor construction for the collapse. South Koreans appear to be paying dearly for the rapid development that has overtaken them.
The Sampung department store collapse remains one of the deadliest peacetime building disasters in history. It showed that when profit is placed above human life, tragedy is inevitable. And even today, around the world, buildings continue to fall for the same reasons: greed, corruption, and ignored warnings. And if you think lessons were learned, think again. In 2013, almost 2 decades later, the Rana Plaza garment factory in Bangladesh collapsed, killing over 1,100 workers. Once again, cracks were ignored. Once again, lives were lost. The story of Sampung isn't just about South Korea. It's a warning to all of us. When greed builds on weak concrete, collapse is only a matter of time.